Hello, everyone, and welcome to CIS mini lessons. Today, we're going to be talking about HTML essential elements. So the first thing that we need to do to be able to work with essential elements is we need to create a new file in a location where we understand where this file is going to be housed. For our new file, I'm going to call it index.html, and it's important to make sure to use the HTML extension on the file to make sure that your page will render correctly in the browser. To also make sure that your page renders correctly in the browser, we're going to use this first line called Doctype. And Doctype is going to essentially help the browser to best adjust for how to interpret the code or the language that's to come in the rest of the file. This HTML that we're using here inside of this Doctype is going to dictate which version of the language that we actually use. The next thing we want to use, or we want to add here, is going to be the HTML element. And element just means that we're going to have an opening tag and a closing tag for the content that we're going to put inside of it. And the difference between an opening tag and a closing tag is simply this /. So the two of them should be a mirror image unless you put the / in on the backside. The HTML element itself is going to help to let the browser know where the HTML content actually starts and where it stops. The next thing we need to add is what's called a head. And the head element is going to hold our metadata. And the metadata that can go in the head is going to essentially be the things that are not really rendered to the page directly. So that's going to be things kind of like title, where we're going to see that in the essentially the browser tabs, but we're not going to really see it directly within the browser page. So it's not considered traditional content. And for our title, I'm just going to put in my first web page, something simple. Okay. And now the reason why we're getting this little squiggly over here with the HTML, I should kind of jump back up just for half a second. And I'm going to add an attribute called language. And language attribute is going to be which spoken language should the browser try to interpret to. Then lastly, we have the body element. And the body element is going to hold all of our content that we want our viewer, our user, to be able to see on the page. So I'm going to add another couple of elements here. I'm going to say hello world in the first one. And the second one, I'm going to add a paragraph element that just says, welcome to my first web page. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to just render this in the browser. And there we go. So we're seeing that we have a header and our paragraph element that are both rendered inside the browser. And if we look up at the tab in the actual, and we can see that our essential elements are all working together to be able to render something viable and feasible to the page.